Hi there and welcome to this week's vlog. Yes, I've had a bit of a trim. My lovely wife Sue cuts my hair. She has done for many years, so I guess she's saved me over that time a lot of money from not having to go to the hairdressers. But anyway, there we go. Let's get on with it. Thanks for joining me. I want to talk about a book that I've read recently, and I've mentioned before on vlogs that I love to read about the lives of people, whether they are well-known people or not well-known. And the most recent autobiography that I've just finished is the autobiography of John Cleese. John Cleese is well known in the UK for two particular TV series that were hugely popular, comedy series. One, Monty Python's Flying Circus, and the other, Fawlty Towers. And especially Fawlty Towers, I used to love watching that. In fact, John Cleese has written a stage play for Fawlty Towers, and there's a nationwide tour next year. Well, yes, it is next year, 2020. In fact, it might be 2025 or 2026. I don't know when it is. But anyway, I've booked to go and see it in Hull. So I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, one of the interesting things about this book is that John Cleese writes about his childhood, his upbringing, moving into adult life. And one of the sad things about it is that his experience of church is really negative, of religion, you might say. In school, when he was taught RE, religious education, it was dull and boring. The teachers who taught him were not inspiring. He wondered whether they actually believed it themselves. And his experience of going to church, which he had to do as a schoolboy, was totally negative, almost totally negative. And so his experience of people who profess faith, of the Christian faith, is sadly really negative. That's influenced his thinking as he moves into adult life. But he writes in his autobiography a very interesting paragraph reflecting on his negative experience of religion. And let me read it to you. He says this: "What gets my goat is that religion should be the most exciting topic of all. Is there an afterlife? Can we have real purpose to our lives? How can we love our enemy when it seems about as easy as levitating? To what extent is self-interest moral? Is there an experience of the divine that we can achieve? All the vital questions have been dumped in favour of half-baked, po-faced rituals, which are basically a form of middle-class rain dance." And I found that really, it's sad, but I found it interesting at the same time. And John Cleese is absolutely right, isn't it? That if our Christian faith is real, then it is the best news ever. That's why gospel means good news. The gospel, the good news, the fact that God came into our world as one of us in Jesus. That's what we celebrate at Christmas. And that some years later, as he began his public ministry, he began to teach about the things of God, and ultimately he gave his life. He sacrificed his life on a cross. But that wasn't the end. He rose from the dead to show that that death has been conquered, that life eternal is available, forgiveness, new life, new hope, light in our darkness. Yes, it is the greatest of all news, the best news, that we can have a relationship with God. We can know our purpose, for God has a plan and a purpose for our lives. We can have a relationship with God through Jesus. Yes, it is the best news ever. And the sad thing is that sometimes Christians don't portray that. It's sometimes said, said that the best advert for Christianity is Christians. When we live it out, when we show that excitement, when we show that love, when we demonstrate that peace in our lives, express that relationship we have with God in our relationship with others. But at the same time, sometimes the worst advert for Christianity is Christians. It's said that Mahatma Gandhi came to the UK and went to some churches, he wasn't well received. And he reportedly said, look, I really like the character of Jesus. I would probably become a believer if it wasn't for Christians and their attitude towards me. And it's sad when we put people off by our attitude, by our lives, by our words, by our actions. Let's express the excitement, the joy. I think of the shepherds when they visited the newborn baby, and they saw that what the shepherds had told them was true. There it was before their eyes. And it says they went away rejoicing, and they wanted to tell what they'd seen. Let's rejoice at the good news of God's love. Let's rejoice and not be afraid to share the good news of his love, to share our experience of his love. I do the park run most Saturdays, and I heard someone say that when we're doing an exercise or a run and going is tough, if we smile, then that, in a sense, can trick our body into thinking it's not so bad after all. And we need to show the joy of God on our faces, not as a trick, but as a reality. Does God impact our life in such a way that others can see it? And then just switching subjects slightly, well, quite a bit actually. No, maybe not. It's going back to 1936. The king at the time, George VI, was going to do his annual Christmas broadcast, which is still done. The monarch here in the UK still does an annual broadcast. King Charles III has done his, following on from his mother, the Queen Elizabeth II. Now, George VI in 1936, at a time when, well, there was great anxiety. Was Great Britain heading to another war? It seemed possible, and we know that it did happen. But he chose to read a poem written by a lady called Minnie Louise Haskins. It has become so famous, certainly the first part of it. I noticed, I remembered on my wall in my office, I've got that poem on a little plaque or a little poster. Beautiful, actually decorated. I want to read it to you as you think about moving into the year 2025. Can it really be a quarter of a century since we started this millennium? I don't know how you look to the new year. Do you look forward to it with hope and expectation, or with maybe anxiety, fears and worries? Well, let me read this to you. I hope it will be of help. Maybe you know it, but it's worth repeating. I like to read it every year. It's called At the Gate of the Year. This is just the first part of a longer poem that she wrote. I said to the man who stood at the gate of the year, give me a light that I may tread safely into the unknown. And he replied, go out into the darkness and put your hand into the hand of God. That shall be to you better than a light and safer than a known way. And my prayer for you and for all of us is that we might, as we move into the new year, with all its unknowns, put our hand into the hand of the God who we can know, who will lead us into all the experiences that lie ahead. So may God richly bless you in the new year. May you know his peace and joy. Thank you so much for listening today. I'll see you next year.